Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome back to another episode now in our new location with our new name, the Hands-On SAP Dev. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Rich Heilman. Thanks for joining us. Say hello, Rich.
Hey everybody, how's it going? I had the YouTube streaming as well, and I was getting an echo. I had to turn it off quick.
Oh yeah, yeah. You got to be careful with that. So glad to see that so many people found us in our new home. Hopefully that isn't too confusing for everybody. But now all the advocates, live streams, and videos will all be in one channel, so it'll be easier for you to find us. So pretty excited about that change, even if it is maybe a little bumpy at first. But today we wanted to do something a little bit different. We've been talking a lot internally about open source projects, and I think everybody will find out why. Hopefully, in a couple weeks, why we've been having so much discussion. A couple weeks ago, I had Lars on, the founder of the ABAP-Git open source project, which is one we want to talk about today. But I thought it would be good to go back and look at a little bit of the history of open source in the SAP world in general, and more specifically for ABAP developers. There's a lot of history there, and some of us that are old folks have been there for a lot of it, and some people that are maybe a little bit younger than those of us with gray beards maybe don't know some of the history. So I thought it would be fun, Rich, to cover up the gray beard. It's there though, you can't hide it. But share a little bit of the history, but also look at a few of the projects that are out there and how you can get started with open source projects as well. So I don't know. With that, you want to go ahead and jump in? Any opening words from you, Rich?
No, I think you covered it. I mean, I know that we've been talking about this the last couple of days, and it's been a nice trip down memory lane. Let's kick it off.
Yeah. So let's just switch over here, and of course, I've got the ABAP development tools where we're going to do a lot of this development, but I actually want to start here with just a little bit. We're going to be referring to this website, the .abap.org, several times here, so we'll come back to this in a minute. This is a great collection of many ABAP open source projects, and that's where we're going to pull some from to try out today. But actually, I want to go back to the beginning, if you will, at least for me, that was the beginning of this idea of open source in the SAP world. And maybe for those of you that were fortunate enough not to have been around in these dark days of before there was any such thing as open source, there was a time when this was not just a foreign concept, but what would you say that the idea of open source and SAP just did not go together at all, did it? Back in the early aughts, right? In 2003 and before, there was just no concept of open source. For one, we didn't have a license that would really let you do open source. There was no developer license, no trial license, nothing like that. So you were if you were doing something, you were probably doing something under a corporate license, or the license, there was an ABAP AS trial, but the license at the time was such that you couldn't technically legally share anything that you did on it.
Yeah, but we didn't really read that anyway.
Well, that didn't stop a few people from going ahead and doing some stuff. And the picture I have pulled up here on the screen, this is actually from TechEd Amsterdam 2006. And this is Dan McWeeny and Ed Herman. Both worked at Colgate at the time. And this is from the Demo Jam, where they were showcasing their winner that year. It won in both Amsterdam and in the U.S. Of SAPlink. And to me, SAPlink is the granddaddy of all current open source projects in the SAP world, in the ABAP world, certainly. It was a tool to facilitate sharing of code using ABAP. In those days, we had to either cut and paste all the code, usually from blogs. That was about the only way we could share code, was to put your code in a text block in a blog, blog entry, and paste it into their own system, because the transport couldn't really realistically exchange CTS files. Go to your basis person, ask them to load this this transport file you got from the internet. I don't know too many basis people that are willing to do that. I don't know. Was that your experience back in the day, Rich?
Well, I wrote a program just to take it from the front end and put it on the back end, and then I did everything myself. So I kind of circumvented
Yeah.
the admin person, but yeah.
Yeah, you either had to circumvent them or bribe them with goodies to get them to import anything. So that wasn't really a very realistic route. And Ed and Dan's idea, in hindsight, was relatively simple. Let's give developers a way to exchange code and import it into the system, go in through a lot of the standard Workbench APIs, but have a standardized format that allowed simple XML-based files to represent the various ABAP development objects and facilitate exchange of those. And I think it really resonated with the community. I mean, I remember a lot of people, like inside SAP, didn't get it, because inside of SAP it's a different thing. I mean, we can exchange code via transport, systems are connected and things like that. But when you talk about distributing code to developers in the community, this was a foreign concept. I remember some colleagues saying, well, we already have OSS nodes. Why do we need this? But the idea that customers would want to exchange code with themselves, that was so radical at the time. So well-deserved kudos to those guys that kind of got this whole thing kicked off. And the fact that they had a plug-in mechanism where the community could contribute additional development artifacts. That was also a big part of this, right?
Right.
So
I can remember when they first launched this in Las Vegas, they had after they won the demo jam, they had the Q&A afterwards, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my first question is to Dan, and this is when I didn't know Dan. This is just me asking a guy that won demo jam about it, the tool, and I said, so does it support DynPros? It's like, no, it doesn't today, but you can make it do that. And I was like, wait, what? So that's kind of my whole first experience with kind of like this open source and SAP kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, we don't support it, but if you want it to do that, go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yeah, I think when they first shipped it after Demo Jam, it supported classes and basic programs, and that was it. And it was like, yeah, now community, go and build everything else, right?
And they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for a long time, SAPlink was the center of the code exchange world inside SAP. In fact, we had a website that was part of the SAP community called I think it was called Code Exchange, wasn't it? I think somebody mentioned it in the chat here a few minutes ago. Yes, Code Exchange. I ran into that the other day when I was doing my research. The former site called Code Exchange that's not there anymore, and it was, well, how would you describe it? Like, GitHub is today, but SAP proprietary and hosted specifically for the SAP ecosystem, I guess.
Yep.
But then along comes a couple years ago, and another community rebel, if you will, with a vision, Lars, with his view of, well, let's take what SAPlink did theoretically, and now let's move it to more open standards. Now that Git is so fundamental, let's go ahead and focus on Git as the tool to exchange, and then we can put our code in standard Git repositories, GitHub, use version control and things like that, and get all that kind of functionality built in. So he really went about creating a similar conceptual infrastructure with plugins and the ability to add in different development artifacts and releasing the whole thing as an open source project. And the reason I pulled up Graham's blog entry here back in 2017, it shows the sort of generational shift here, going from SAPlink to ABAP-Git. Making a call out to the founders of the original SAPlink, but also, ABAP, how this is an evolution of what we had, and this was an important step in open source, because it was great to be able to share code and have a mechanism just to exchange code, but now we're out there with the rest of the world using the same standards and technologies that they are, and that was a really important step as well.
But I do miss the Slinky file.
I was talking to Dan the other day, yesterday, in fact, on Slack, and he was a little disappointed, Lars, that there was no cool names in ABAP-Git like Slinky and Nugget. He was a little disappointed that it didn't. That we didn't continue the tradition of his crazy naming. And I think one time he said he named them such crazy things just because he wanted, he hoped someday an SAP executive would use the term Slinky or Nugget on stage, and he was very happy when Shai Agassi did so at TechEd on stage, used the term, I think he used both terms, Slinky and Nugget. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess that brings us back to the .abap, which lists many of the open source projects, and of course one of the first ones here is ABAP-Git, and I want to talk a little bit for a second about how to get started with ABAP-Git. And we also have SAPlink Git, which I'll come back to here in a minute, because if you still have some older SAPlink nuggets or slinkies that you want to still import into your system, you can do so, because there is an ABAP-Git based version of SAPlink that you can bring into your system as well. But let's talk for a minute about how to get started. So let me go back to the development environment. And I've got two environments here that will bounce back and forth between. I've got my local ABAP system, which if we look at that, I'll show you here. See that pretty well. That's a little small. I can't change the size on all the windows here, but you can see this is an ABAP 1909 S4 Foundation system, so pretty up to date ABAP release. This is where I was testing the local stuff and some of the projects that require SAP GUI and things like that. And then I've got a trial system here as well, which I did not log into in advance because I figured it would just time out and I'd have to log in again. So give me a second. There we are. So we've got a ABAP on SAP Cloud Platform trial system. So also latest and greatest there. Okay. And to me, the thing when we talk about ABAP-Git is a way to bring code into the two systems. There are two different ways of interacting, depending on if you're working with ABAP in the cloud or ABAP on-premise. And ABAP in the cloud, what we have is we have the ABAP-Git plugin to Eclipse, right? So if I come here and choose my system, and then I've installed this as an extra add-in to Eclipse. Maybe I'm back here and I'm going to show you. Install and update. It is its own update site. So eclipse.abapgit.org. I've installed that into my ABAP development tools, and then when I connect to an ABAP cloud-based system, and I can see, for instance, in this particular system, being a trial, there's a lot of different users on here. And you can see all the different people that are using abapGit to bring in all these various open source projects. So some of these may look familiar, Rich. There's the ABAP file uploader. There's somebody that forked the ABAP file uploader so they could put their own copy of it in the system. We got it looks like a fork of the ABAP REST code jam been loaded in the system. We got ABAP OO Basics, ABAP Wrap, and then various other things. So people could create their own Git projects and bring them into the cloud trial system. This is a great way, since the trial is temporary. Every 90 days you have to get a new account. By pushing your code to Git and then being able to pull it back into the system, it's an easy way to restore it. But there's also you see a lot of shared code here, samples that are made available, and people can pull those into the system as well. And the process here is pretty simple. You just give it the URL, and then you can pull it in the system. Now, there's so many already loaded here. I was going to do an example, but like all of the standard ones here have been pulled into the system already. Maybe I could pull, but I didn't want to. And I worry if I just pull one here at random, it might not be one that's compatible with the ABAP Cloud, because of course not everything with the reduced syntax and no SAP GUI and things like that. Not every sample is going to be compatible with the ABAP Cloud.
Right.
But what I wanted to actually focus more on today is the on-premise full ABAP experience. And for that, what I've done is I've gone ahead. I've already installed a bunch of these, but we can install one as well. But I've installed zABAP-Git. So if you follow the instructions, where'd my other window go? So for instance, you want to install ABAP-Git, you could go ahead to its page, and they've got very nice detailed instructions, easy installation, easy upgrade. Where do I go to the documentation page? And then I followed the installation instructions the other day. This was a pretty clean system. On this particular system, I had never installed ABAP-Git before. It's pretty much brand new. But basically, you download the code of a little bootstrap program, if you will, that will allow you to then load the rest of ABAP-Git. Very similar to the way that SAPlink used to do. They used to have a little program that you could download, and then it would load the rest of SAPlink. So this is the last, as Ed and Dan used to say, the last program you'll ever have to cut and paste. So you cut and paste this into your system or import it from a zip file, and then you run that program to bring in the rest of ABAP-Git. And if I come back over here, let's just open, this is SAP GUI based. And I've already imported, so I've got the transaction code, zABAP-Git now. And there we are, and you see all the things that I've imported. I've imported ABAP-Git itself, and in fact, now I can use ABAP-Git to keep ABAP-Git up to date as well. I could come in here and I could see if there's any differences, if there's any updates to ABAP-Git. I don't know. Did they update it overnight? Probably not likely, since I just installed this late yesterday, and they probably haven't updated it since last night. But it would check the version, see if there's any changes, and I could pull in new versions. I could go to different branches. All the concepts of Git are at play here, where I could have different branches, different stages that I could pull the code from. Wow, that's taking a long time to check there. But yeah, okay, so actually, it does look like there are maybe some differences, but I'm not going to go ahead and pull ABAP-Git. I'm not brave enough to attempt that in the middle of a live demo. What I thought we would do instead is we'd take one of the other projects just to show you the installation process and how easy it is for anybody that hasn't done this before. So let's go back to the ABAP Git page. You got one in particular you want me to try, Rich?
Let's see here.
One that I
How
haven't got
about the
Can I do the file uploader in the on-premise? I haven't tried. Or that
uh,
will no, that will only work
that
in ABAP Cloud.
uses
Yeah,
yeah,
it's got the
yeah,
new APIs.
yeah.
What,
How about the where is it? I don't see it now. The Excel one.
Uwe suggests zJSON. We'll talk
Oh,
about that in a
yeah.
second. I've already imported that one because that was the one I prepared for a demo. What were you saying, Rich?
I don't know, the Excel one?
I've already imported that one too.
Oh,
I,
okay.
I took some of the some of my favorites, which we'll talk about here in a minute, and already imported those. But I was looking for one that's maybe relatively small that that we could import real quick just to do a test. Maybe, let's grab this data matrix one. I don't even know
Okay.
what this is. Data matrix implemented in ABAP.
All right.
Yeah, okay. A data matrix implemented in ABAP using smart forms. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's try this one. I don't know if it'll work, but let's see. So I've got the URL. Notice what I did is I just cut and pasted the URL from Git, and then I'm going to come back over here to ABAP-Git, and I'm going to do onlines. There's two options here. You can pull offline where you're importing the file if you don't have a live connection to the internet. I set up the connection to the internet and the certificates and everything, so I can just do online. So let's just go ahead and say new online. I put in the URL. I say what package I want to put it in. See data matrix. What branch? I'll pull it from the master branch. What do I want it to be displayed as? Data matrix. I don't know. Yeah, and I can go ahead and create the Z package as well. Data matrix. Put it in a transport request. I only have one out here. You can tell this is a really fresh system. The numbering is really low. And then I can say clone, and it's going to go ahead and pull that in. So there's my data matrix. And I can see, yeah, this is relatively small. Just a program and a smart form here. Or is that a smart form or a SAP script? I can't remember what it said. But I can just go ahead and say
Smart
pull.
form.
Yeah, smart form. And it will pull that content down into my system for me. No cutting and pasting. And while it does that, let's go ahead and add it. Oh. Oh, man.
We picked the wrong one.
Yeah, we managed to break ABAP-Git, didn't we? Access using a zero object reference is not possible. Ooh. Is Lars watching?
What's up, Lars? What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah, we picked one at random there. Well, let's see. I think. Yeah, this is Lars's project too. So we'll let maybe we'll let Lars comment on that that one. But there's plenty of others that I pulled that did work okay. But you get the idea of the flow, even if things didn't go perfectly right. You know, what would have happened if that hadn't dumped is then I would have another package here, and it would have all the objects in that package, right? So, of course, you know.
Inactive, right?
No, it activates them.
Activates them? Okay.
Yeah. With this version of ABAP-Git, it does activate them. I didn't have to activate any of these the other night. Yeah. Works on my machine. Yes, of course it works on your machine, does it? All right, so let's. So you get the general flow. I don't know. Do we want to try with another one real quick? Since that didn't, I don't like leaving a bad taste with a failed demo in anyone's mouth. But
yeah, let's try another one.
I should have maybe pre-tested one that I backed out and then I could do again. But data validator tool? I don't know. That sounds interesting. I don't know what that is. But you want to try it? How about data validator?
Okay.
Let's see how big it is.
Yikes.
It's not too bad. Let's give it a try.
All right.
If this doesn't work, then we'll move on to the rest of the demos. But that was my SAP GUI, didn't I? All right. zABAP-Git. And let's try another one. Let's do a new online. Data validator. Create package. There we are. Clone it and go to the data validator. And now we'll pull it into our system. Yeah, that's fine. Put in our transport. And while that's importing.
Crushed your fingers.
Yeah, I know. I'll tell you what, while that's adding, I'll go ahead and add this to my favorites so it's easier to find. Data validator. We can watch it. It's already importing stuff here. You can see the number going up as it imports. Getting there. Almost done. There we are. Now it's done.
Nice.
That's
nice.
the way. That's the way it should work, right?
Yep.
So, yeah. No, I didn't research this one at all. And with any of these open source projects, it probably makes good sense to read their documentation as to what it does and how it does it, and examples. A lot of these have some really great examples in here. They solve common problems. I did not read ahead on this one, but this looks like this is pretty cool. Do different regex-based validations and configuration of validator. Maybe I'll have to play around with this one later. I did not research this one in advance, but that's kind of the whole point here: is common problems, common frameworks, rather than everybody solve them over and over again. Somebody's got a good idea that's already solved them in a unique or novel way, shares them with the whole rest of the community here. So that's the whole idea. Any comments, thoughts before we look at some of these in detail? No?
Nope.
No. All right, so let's bounce back here. Which one do you want to look at first? Here's the ones that I have to look at, and I pulled in several here that we can look at in detail, look at what they do now that we've seen the process. Yes, I did pull in SAPlink. Like I said, there is an option to import SAPlink itself, like if you have an old Nugget or Slinky, and you want to bring those in. But I used ABAP-Git to import the whole SAPlink framework as well. So if you've got good old SAPlink, yeah, the old headers are still in here.
Wow.
Somehow I don't know if these email addresses are still any good, but yeah. But yeah, that was a trip down memory lane, importing all that good stuff. But the other ones that I imported that I thought would be interesting to look at, ones that I used to use a lot, are the zJSON and the ABAP to XLSX. I thought, let's go ahead and start here with the zJSON, maybe? Have you used this one before, Rich?
Once or twice, probably.
Yeah, this was before we had good JSON processing in the ABAP kernel itself. Uwe created this, which encompassed, 7 years ago, that encompassed JSON processing. What I like about it is over the years, he's updated this as say, the processing inside ABAP has become more sophisticated with JSON. Oh, that's not right. I wanted to go to... Why did it not go to the wiki? There. Yeah. he's done a good job of updating this over the years to use the more performant and better solutions to process JSON, but he still provides a very easy, consistent interface for interacting with JSON that does some cool things. For instance, I really liked one of his more recent features here is it replaces double underscores and turns that into camel case. Because I really like, I like my JSON to be camel cased, and that feels more, a little less ABAP and a little more, natively JavaScript and things like that. So I thought I imported his this framework. Wait, where'd my clips go? Oh, there it is. Just the icon's gone. So I did import this, a lot of APIs, transformations. He's even got a WebDin Pro. Oh, no, I'm in the wrong one here. I'm sorry. We'll come back to that in a second. The JSON one. So he's got his the main API class, ZCL JSON document. And I've just prepared a little sample app of how to use this. All right, if I can get it to click here. And what I did, first of all, I created a type so I could use the camel case. I really wanted to use this camel case feature, so put the double underscores in the places where I wanted it camel cased. Now, then I'm just selecting all those columns from SFlight into my internal table, right? Using the as to map it into the fields with the same names. And then this is his API, basically ZCL JSON document, create with data. You pass it the data. You can set options. Like I'm saying here, please replace the double underscores. That turns it into camel case. And then I'm able to output it. So I'll get the JSON back, and then I'm running this as a console app, and it will output it. So let's run this and have a look. Make that a little bigger there.
And this gives you more options than using like the the /UI2 something or other.
Yeah. I mean, he's got like I said, he's wrapped around different SAP ways of doing this as they've expanded over time. Now with XSLTs and stuff like that. But he's provided, like I said, it's still a consistent interface and convenience features like this that don't appear in the SAP libraries themselves.
Right.
And what you see here is now it's converted very nicely to camel case. Yeah, so very easy, and doesn't just convert ABAP data to JSON. He can go back the other way as well. Yeah, so very nice utility. Particularly maybe you're still running on some of the older releases that maybe don't have some of that functionality, the JSON processing functionality. Very nice workaround.
But you still probably have the limitation of what's under the hood there, right? I mean, if he's using some of that SAP.
Yeah, he's got where was it in here? In his notes, he's got starting with basis release 702 SPS 11. It's possible to parse JSON. If you don't need the special features of the JSON document class, you can use a new class method to convert JSON. Better performance, less memory consumption. Got some examples of how to switch to the simple transformation. So he's added that new functionality in. It looks like still keeping his backwards compatibility to the older way to do it as well. Very nice.
Cool.
Another one that I've used for years and is probably one of the most common problems in the ABAP world, most common task, is converting to Excel, right? And doing it in a way, I mean, what do we always struggle with? I mean, it's relatively easy to create a text tab delimited or comma separated file. Mm-hmm. Well, when you really get into it, you want to create a nice Excel, true Excel with formatting and you know, powerful features of Excel, formulas,
Hmm.
multiple sheets and stuff like that. You just can't do that with text tab delimited, and you need it becomes much more complicated for one. So here, this is also a very long-lived project. Let me go back and see if we got the number of years here. So let's look here at Excel. ABAP2 XSLS, 7 years. I'm wondering if these 7 years, if that was like when they were migrated out of Code Exchange. Maybe Uwe even said something about it. Was the project the one that was posted in Code Exchange after some time used in SAP Standard code under a different name? Uwe said yes, parts of the code are now in SAP Standard. So going back to the JSON example, he says that some of that's even in Standard code now. Yeah. I wonder if this 7 years mark was when they were maybe migrated out of Code Exchange. So some of these are even longer lived. If does anybody know? Were some of these, maybe someone on the chat remembers, were some of these even originally distributed via SAPlink before they were migrated to ABAP-Git? I'm pretty sure, given the age of some of these projects, they were. But if somebody remembers the age, or Uwe, maybe you can let us know on the chat when you originally posted the ABAP, the zJSON one. You know, it says 7 years here, but I'm thinking it was even longer than that. But yeah, feel free to comment in the chat if you have a more exact history there. But back to the ABAP2 XLSX. This is another one very widely used. You can see how many times it's been accessed. 46,000 times, 291 stars. Really rich, robust set of functionality. Great set of samples in here as well. This is the one that does have a WebDimpro example as well, but it has tons of sample programs of how to do different things with this. You know, basic export, sheet protection, merging cells, hiding columns, all the things you'd expect. Macro-enabled workbooks.
Open one of those up.
Yeah. You want to see one?
Yeah. I want to know what it uses under the hood.
Let's see what it uses. Well, it's using its own class. This DCL Excel, this whole class structure that they've imported. The writers, the worksheets, styles, it's all represented as ABAP classes.
All right, we're going to have to drill down into this then.
You want to go deep into this. You want to know what it's doing here.
Is it using OLE?
I didn't drill down deeply into it. I don't think it is, because it's workable from WebDimpro. I think it's all you working at the the XML level. That's why they have transformations here. So they're transforming the data, certain parts of it, using XSLTs. There's probably some raw XML processing down in there as well. But I admittedly did not dig deep into class. I was too busy playing around with the examples to see how what all it did. I mean, if you were to go down into one of these, I don't know if I picked a good one here or not, yeah, get from row. I don't know if we got one here that would show the rendering, and with me just picking one here at random. It's a big set of classes too.
Yeah.
And if we just start picking through one here at random, we could be picking a while. But what I wanted to show you is I wanted to run it. Let's run this Angry Birds one. Just ask me where I want to export Excel sheet. So send it out to my documents. There it is. And I thought this one was really cool. It's going to take a second for Excel to open here, isn't it? While we're waiting for that to open, Uwe says that, okay, so ABAP2 XLSX was originally released in 2010. And Uwe said that he wrote zJSON for another open source project, TWIBAP, the ABAP Twitter API. Remember that? And that was 8 or 9 years ago. He originally wrote it to deal with ABAP OAuth. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Yeah, and as we said, you were just asking about no OLE. The ABAP 2XL, like we were saying, no, it doesn't use it because it does WebDynPro. But another good point that Frank just pointed out here, that also means it works in the background as well.
Yeah, nice. When I worked at my SAP customer, I had to what they wanted to have an existing Excel sheet updated with new values by a program, and I had to use OLE to actually. They had to run it, right? Run the program. It would open up this file, inject values into it, and save it, and print it, and then save it, or something like that. It was
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that sounds like you could do very easily with the ABAP 2 XLSX.
Yeah.
Now, and here's the output of running that ABAP report. We got a cool little Angry Birds pig here produced in pixel art. That's very cool. That's why I thought that one was a fun one to do as a demo, but it shows you the power of what you can do here. This goes way beyond simple CSV or text tab delimited exports and really unlocks the full power here of Excel. Very, very cool. So those are some of the what I would classify as the oldies but goodies, the classic ones that have definitely shown the test of time here. Given the time we have left, there's two others. There's a couple others that I picked out, but given the time we have left, there's two others that I wanted to have a look at here today. ABAP Express and zSwagger, and Swagger. Here,
Yeah, what's this Express stuff?
Express. So from familiar with Node.js development?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. So Express is the common HTTP server framework that particularly is useful for creating REST interfaces. It makes it really easy to hang new routes, is what they call them, off of certain HTTP verbs. Allows you to focus on just what functionality do you want to execute when those certain verbs happen. And what someone has done here is created their version of Express, but for ABAP, basically ICF handlers, HTTP service handlers. But instead of you having to hand code responding to different verbs and operations and then mapping those to your own custom logic, it allows you to focus on just creating route classes that will automatically attach just basically the same way that Express works. So I thought this was cool because the others, I mean, it was a very ABAP-centric problem solved in an ABAP way and then shared, I would say. And what you see here is a little different because now people are looking at open source projects from other environments, from Node.js or Java or something like that, and saying, oh, these are really good ideas. Let's bring that idea into the ABAP world. And that's a whole nother category of open source projects, is bringing some of the best ideas. Not only are you bringing fresh ideas in the ABAP world, but you're also making it easier for developers that maybe that come from another environment, that are Node.js developers, to come into the ABAP world and maybe feel a little bit more comfortable if there's a common library that they're used to using. They can bring it into this environment and use it. So what we have here is I've imported the Express, and what you do, I need to stop closing my SAP GUI window. Is I've gone into SICF and just created a new handler here. Named it Express, but this is the real handler here, this test underneath here, and gave it a handler class. Just looking at their sample from their page, this testing service. And if we look at the testing service, it has to inherit from their imported service, okay? And then basically you have to just bootstrap, just like you would Express, tell it what you want to run off of. So I'm saying, here's your root, Express test, that's the SICF root that I created. And then you create your own route classes. We'll look at that in a second. That's this route test. And then you hang it off of what verbs. So I said I wanted to respond to get, post, put, and delete. And here's the route handler. And if there's any subpath that you want to attach to that. Just conceptually, the same way that you would use Express. So once you set this up and you attach your routes, then all your logic is really over here in the separate route class. So if we look at it, it's very simple. It's just going to echo back whatever method is called in, just for testing purposes here. But it keeps you. It does a couple things. And Express does the same thing. It keeps your route logic independent of the actual path that it's attached to. So you could have a route used in different different handlers and in different SICF handlers or in different paths, and it also keeps you potentially verb independent here as well, and just keeps the code a little cleaner too, by having it separated from keeping your routes in separate classes. In this case, separate classes. Like in JavaScript, I would create a separate JS file to put my individual routes in. It just helps you organize your code a little bit better. We see the same sort of thing here. And we can go ahead and test this. Wouldn't be any fun if we didn't test it, right? Let's test service. And what you see here is just echoing back the get. It's echoing our verb back to us. That gives you an idea of how easy it is to get started, poking your own routes rather than hand coding your SICF node handler class. Particularly maybe for people that aren't as familiar with SICF handlers, that haven't done a lot of the hand coding of them, this could be a great way to get started.
Neat stuff.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Last one I wanted to look at was Swagger. This is another one from Lars.
Does Lars have like a day job? I mean,
to say he's a very inventive guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's out there doing all kinds of cool stuff. The idea is to pull Swagger or Open API into the ABAP environment, and this is a way of documenting and standardizing REST-based interfaces. A similar concept to OData itself, and not exactly a one-to-one relationship there. But another form of openness and interchangeability for REST services. This is something that personally I've been playing around with in the Node.js and CAP environment. I've been wrapping CAP services in my own custom REST services that I create in Node.js with Open API or Swagger, and it creates a really nice Swagger UI. This testing UI, and if anybody sees this, you probably are familiar with it. Like if you use the API hub, it uses the same sort of interface to be able to test the APIs. And the idea with Swagger or Open API, depending on the version, they use two different names here, but it's essentially the same conceptual thing, is I can define my inputs, my outputs, the interface of a REST interface, because it doesn't have a metadata document. A standard REST interface doesn't have a metadata document like OData normally would. And it lets you both have that metadata document for your basic REST interfaces, but also a test tool to help you visualize them. So what Lars has done is brought this into the ABAP environment. So once again, creating REST services just means creating an SICF handler, right? So let's go here where I've imported And I've just altered his example here.
For the record, he does have a day job.
He does have a day job.
I'm wondering if his employer knows that, though.
So you have a basic handler where you're building up the metadata, and then an implementation of your handler class, of your REST interface. I altered it here to hang it. I put it underneath the Express one. It is not tied nor dependent upon Express. I was just lazy and didn't create another root handler and put it under the one that I had tested previously. But let's go ahead and run this. I think that's the more interesting part here. Is I just took it here. Let's run the swag. We test the service, and what we can see here. If I add what is it? If I add Swagger JSON, then we see the metadata document that gets generated off of his interface that he's defined with just 2 parameters here, right? So very simple, but if you're building your own custom REST interfaces, SICF handlers, you define those parameters in the metadata, and then it's going to generate this off of it. So think of this as like your $sign metadata if this was an OData service that gets generated from your service definition. But the part that I love is he's even got the Swagger UI support in here. So I changed this to Swagger HTML. Nice. I got the host Swagger UI with the the ability to test this. Try it out. Yeah, I want to try it out. I'm going to pass some test. And we execute that. And then it calls the service. And then we get our response back. We see our data coming back. So you want to quickly build REST services as SICF handlers that have a great self-documenting metadata with a test tool. This is the way to go. I after having seen this, I personally in the ABAP world lately, I've been doing some REST services. I would absolutely add this project in on top of any REST services that I've done. I love having Swagger UI on top of my REST services. Yeah, so was built for we originally built this for the ABAP-Git server. It's funny how these projects so many of them have their genesis in other projects. Mm-hmm. That just goes to show you it's a relatively small portion of the SAP ecosystem that's contributing to the open source, but even amongst them, they're solving some of their own problems, which spawns more projects, which just tells you if more people were contributing, how many more problems would we be solving in the whole for the overall community. It's I hope that's one takeaway that people get here. First of all, this stuff is out there, it's available for you to use, and there's some really great stuff to help you. But the one, and is always the case, contributions are always a small portion of the overall community. There's 152 projects, 100,000 downloads, but there's far more ABAP developers out there. There's a small number of people here contributing over and over again. You see many of the same contributors. The call to action here to the overall community, there's many more ABAP developers. We could have so much more contributions. And even if you don't have an idea for a project of your own, these projects are active and they're taking pull requests. You can use ABAP-Git to contribute your own enhancements to them. Maybe it's just documentation that you can help augment on some of these. I'm sure all these authors, all these teams would be happy to have more contributions from the community. I think that's the big thing that the ABAP community could definitely get better at, is contributing more to these.
Yeah, my message would be to get involved. If you're not involved, get involved. If you want to learn something, get involved with these open source projects. I go back to the SAPlink thing, and even if I wasn't called out by Dan right in front of 100 people, I probably would have contributed something. But And I did, and I learned a ton by doing it. I mean, I didn't know what it was the hood. I got in there and I started messing around and plugging things into their infrastructure, and I learned a ton just by getting involved in doing that. So, it's a great way to expand your knowledge on some of these things.
Yeah. Well, I hope if nothing else, part of the purpose today is make people that maybe weren't aware that all these projects are out here, that they're there, the tools are there to get started. It's so easy to get started using them. It's just as easy to get started contributing back, thanks to tools like abapGit. But yeah, I hope people do get inspired, get interested, and at the least check out what's out here and put it to use yourself. There's some really great projects that are out here, and I'm happy that we could highlight just a small portion of them. There's many more out here. I picked some that piqued my interest. That's no knock against any of the others. We of course don't have time to go through them all, but there's some really great stuff out here. Yeah, so thanks everybody for joining us today. I think we'll wrap up there. Especially happy to see some of the same names in the chat as our contributors out here. So kudos to everybody who is a very active contributor, a project owner, somebody that came up with an idea for some of these projects. There's great work, and it's great of you guys to give back to the community as you do. We really appreciate that, and. So this show is really dedicated to everybody who's ever given back in this way. But once again, thanks for following us to our new location here. Hope everybody likes the fact that you can find all of our videos and live streams in one place. And until next time, which next time for me is next week, but we do have a couple. DJ has 2 more live streams this week, one tomorrow and one Friday. So if you maybe haven't checked out some of DJ's in the past, I strongly recommend that you do. He's got one on. He's going to interview the docu-writer, the main docu-writer for the Cloud Application Programming Model tomorrow. That should be interesting. And on Friday, he's going to, I think, do something with JavaScript functions. I'm sure, knowing DJ, it will be deep, it will be fun, and maybe slightly esoteric, deep language discussion. That's DJ's always good for that sort of thing. But until next time, thanks for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed today's show.